I want to tell you a story I once believed I understood. A story about a lie that followed me through childhood, into adulthood, and all the way into the quiet corners of my heart where memories try to hide. For most of my life, I thought that lie destroyed something inside me. I thought it stole my trust, my innocence, my sense of belonging. And for many years, I blamed one person for it, the woman who raised me. But the strange thing about life is this: sometimes the truth arrives late. Sometimes it arrives when you are finally calm enough, old enough, or broken enough to hear it. And sometimes the truth comes not as a weapon, but as a soft hand on your shoulder. This is the story of the truth that came to me late. The truth she hid from me, not to deceive me, but to protect me in ways I never understood. I remember the day everything changed. It was raining outside, the gentle kind of rain that feels like someone whispering against the window. I was sitting alone in my living room, holding a small box I had found while cleaning, my mother's old room. A small wooden box, smelling faintly of sandalwood and old memories. Inside it were letters addressed to me, letters I had never seen before. My heart started beating in a strange rhythm, slow, then fast, then slow again, like it was trying to understand something before my mind could catch up. Why were these letters hidden? Who wrote them? Why now? I remember whispering to myself, what else did she hide from me? At that moment I felt hurt, betrayed, confused, but I did not yet know that everything inside that box would change my life and my understanding of her. Before I open the letters with you, I need to go back to the beginning, to when I was a child, and I thought the world was simple, safe, and easy to understand. Back then I lived with one truth: my mother loved me, nothing more, nothing less, and nothing deeper than that. But love, I later learned, sometimes requires silence, sometimes it requires sacrifice, and sometimes it requires a lie, the setup, my childhood, my mother, and the quiet we lived in. Growing up, our home was small but warm. We lived in a little neighborhood where children played in the streets until sunset, and everyone knew everyone else's name. Our house had 3 rooms, a tiny kitchen, and windows that always smelled of fresh laundry because my mother hung clothes outside every morning. I used to follow her everywhere, into the kitchen, the backyard, down the street to the small grocery shop. She never complained, never pushed me away. She would simply smile and say, "Stay close, I feel better when you're near." I remember thinking even as a child that her smile carried a kind of sadness, a quiet sadness, like she was learning to live with a wound she never talked about. Our life was simple. Every morning she woke me with a soft shake of my shoulder. Every afternoon she cooked something warm, even when money was tight. Every night we sat together, just the 2 of us, watching the world grow silent. But whenever I asked about my father, or about our family, or about the years before I was old enough to remember, her face changed, not angry, not irritated, just guarded, like there was a door inside her heart she had locked from the inside. She would always say the same thing: "Some stories are meant to be told later." As a child, I accepted that. As a teenager, I resented it. And as an adult, I began to question everything. There were small signs even then, little moments that felt strange, but I was too young to understand them, like the way neighbors would sometimes stop talking when we walked by, or the look in their eyes, pity mixed with something else, something uncomfortable, something that made me feel like I was part of a story I didn't know, or the way my mother became nervous whenever someone mentioned my birthday, or how she avoided family gatherings entirely, or how she never allowed me to look through old photo albums. Once, when I was about 8, I tried to open a drawer she kept locked. She caught me, and instead of scolding me, she sat beside me on the floor, wrapped me in her arms, and whispered, "Please don't open things you're not ready to carry." Ready to carry, as if the truth itself had weight. At that age, I didn't understand, but those words would come back to me years later, heavy and loaded with meaning. My teenage years were the hardest, not because of school or friends, but because of the silence inside our home, the silence that grew louder as I got older. I would ask her again and again, "Why don't we have any family pictures? Why don't we visit anyone? Who were you before me?" She always looked away, not with guilt, but with fear, a fear she tried so hard to hide from me. At 16, I stopped asking. I decided that whatever she was hiding, it must be something terrible, something shameful, something she didn't trust me with, and that hurt me in ways I didn't know how to express. I started building distance, slow, invisible distance, between us, less talking, less sitting together, less trusting. She noticed, of course she noticed, but she never pushed me. She simply said, "When the time comes, you will understand everything, I promise you." I hated those words then. But now I know they were not a promise, they were a prayer, a hope that the truth wouldn't break me when it finally came. Through all of this, she worked 2 jobs, cleaning houses in the morning and stitching clothes at night. She never complained, never rested. Her hands were always tired, her eyes always soft. I didn't know then that she was carrying a truth heavier than any work she did, a truth she protected not only with lies, but with her entire life. The older I got, the more I questioned my place in the world. Why did our life feel different from others? Why were we always alone? Why did I feel like I belonged to a story with missing chapters? But my mother never gave me the answers. She only gave me love. Love that felt both comforting and confusing. Love that made me wonder what she was trying to protect me from. And then, one day, several years later, life answered the question for me. Not gently, not slowly, but all at once. It happened after she passed away. And it began with that small wooden box. When I found it, hidden beneath her clothes in a drawer she rarely touched, my hands trembled. Something inside me whispered that this box held the truth she had been guarding all my life. A truth I had wanted for years, but was suddenly afraid to face. There were several letters inside, old, yellowed at the edges, some sealed, some open. The topmost one had my name on it, written in her handwriting but shakier, like it was written in a moment of fear or urgency. I held it for several minutes before opening it. My breath felt heavy, my chest tight. The room around me was silent except for the sound of rain, and then, slowly, I opened the letter. What I read inside did not break me, not immediately. It confused me first, then shocked me, then softened me in ways I cannot explain, because the letter began with 7 simple words. "I lied to protect you. Please forgive me." This is where the truth begins. This is where her silence finally spoke, and this is where my understanding of her and of myself finally changed. But I will take you through it slowly, gently, the way life revealed it to me, because some truths need time, and this one needed years. When I finished reading the first line of her letter, I didn't know whether to cry or simply sit there in silence. "I lied to protect you. Please forgive me." 7 words, 7 soft, trembling words that changed the air in the room. My mother was gone. I could no longer ask her what she meant, no longer look into her eyes and search for the truth she had kept hidden all these years. But the moment I read those words, something inside me, something wounded and angry, went still. For the first time in a long time, I felt her presence, not as a memory, not as a shadow, but as warmth, as if she were sitting beside me, watching me hold the last part of her she had left behind. I read the letter again, and again, and again. Her handwriting dipped and rose like a quiet river. The ink was faded in some places, darker in others. It felt like she had written it not in one breath but over many days, maybe even months. The letter wasn't long, just a page, but every sentence felt like a secret she had carried close to her heart. She wrote about love, about fear, about promises she made to herself, and about the night she decided to hide the truth, the night everything changed for both of us. But she didn't explain what the truth was, not in that letter. It felt more like a beginning than an answer, a doorway, not a destination. And the rest of the letters in the box, some addressed to me, some addressed to no one, felt like the steps I would need to take to understand everything she never voiced. I placed the first letter on my lap. My hands were shaking not from fear, but from the weight of anticipation. The rain outside softened, the room felt colder, and for a moment, I felt like a child again, sitting on the floor, looking up at my mother, waiting for her to tell me something important. I reached for the second letter. This one wasn't addressed to me. It didn't even have a name on it, just a date from many years before, a date before I could even speak my first words. I unfolded it carefully, as if the paper might fall apart. My heart raced in a strange rhythm, like it was trying to prepare me. The letter began simply, "I hope one day you understand why I chose silence." My breath caught in my throat. Silence. She had lived inside silence for so many years, and now that she was gone, her words were finally speaking. The letter continued, "There were things I could not tell you, not because I did not trust you, but because I feared the world would not be kind to you if it knew." Feared the world? Feared what exactly? I kept reading slowly, letting each sentence settle inside me. She wrote about taking precautions, about keeping certain people away, about changing her name when I was still very small, about moving us to a quiet neighborhood far away from where we used to live. Every detail made my mind spin. Why did she change her name? Why did we leave our old home? Why did she always avoid talking about the past? Before this moment, I had always imagined small, ordinary reasons. But now it felt much bigger, deeper, something heavy enough to make a woman carry silence for years. I placed the second letter beside the first. My chest felt tight, like I was holding my breath for too long. I whispered, "What were you protecting me from?" But there was no answer, only the soft echo of rain outside. I reached for the third letter, my fingers hesitated. There was something different about this one. It was sealed, tightly, almost forcefully. My name was written on it, but not in her handwriting, not the handwriting I knew from birthday notes, grocery lists, or the little messages she used to tuck into my lunchbox. This handwriting was different, sharper, more deliberate, almost masculine. I stared at the envelope for a long time. Why would there be a letter from me, written by someone else, hidden inside her private box? My mind drifted back to the years when I used to ask her about my father. She always looked away, always changed the subject, always smiled a little too quickly. Was this letter connected to him? Was this why she lied? Was this the truth she feared would break me? I pressed the envelope against my chest, feeling my heart beat through the thin paper. I was scared to open it, not because I feared the truth, but because I knew that once I opened it, nothing would ever be the same again. I placed it aside, not ready yet. Instead, I reached for another letter. This one was in her handwriting, dated several years later, and when I opened it, I felt my throat tighten as I read the first line. "The past follows us even when we try to run." It continued, "I know he will try to find us again, not because he loves you, not because he wants you, but because he believes he owns anything connected to him." My fingers froze on the page. Who was he? My father? Someone else? Someone dangerous? My mother had never used such strong words before. Her life had always been quiet, painfully quiet, but these letters hinted at storms she never showed me. She kept writing, "If anything ever happens to me and he finds you, please remember this. You do not owe him anything, not even your questions." My stomach twisted, my hands grew cold. What kind of man was she talking about? What past was she running from? What truth was she protecting me from with her silence? I closed my eyes for a moment. I could almost imagine her sitting at the kitchen table late at night, writing this letter while the world slept, her hands shaking, her heart heavy, her mind racing with fear. I could almost hear her voice, soft, tired, filled with worry, whispering, "I hope you never have to read this." But here I was, reading the words she prayed I would never see. The more letters I opened, the clearer something became. My mother didn't lie out of shame. She didn't lie because she didn't trust me. She lied because she wanted to build a world where I could grow without fear. She wanted to bury a truth that would have changed the way I saw myself and my life. Each letter was like a piece of a puzzle I didn't yet understand, but something was forming, a shape, a story, a shadow from the past. There were letters about our old neighborhood, letters about people she cut ties with, letters about nights when she couldn't sleep because she feared the sound of footsteps outside, letters where she apologized, not for lying, but for not being strong enough to tell me sooner. My emotions kept shifting: confusion, sadness, grief, love, and something else I couldn't name. But underneath all of it, a quiet question kept returning. What truth could be so painful that she carried it alone her entire life? Through all these letters, one name never appeared. Not once. My father's name. It was as if she erased him entirely, not just from our lives, but from the story of who we were. She had kept everything carefully hidden, even the anger, even the fear, even the memories that must have shaped her. She carried them alone, and I didn't know whether to resent her for it or love her more for the strength it must have taken. As the hours passed, the rain outside turned into a soft drizzle, the daylight faded into evening, and the room grew dim. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat there on the floor with the letters scattered around me, feeling like time had stopped. The sealed letter, the one in the unfamiliar handwriting, lay untouched beside me. Its presence felt heavy, like it was waiting, calling, demanding to be opened. But I still wasn't ready, because once I opened it, everything would change. And the truth inside it, whatever it was, felt like the heart of the story my mother had spent her entire life protecting. Night fell. The house became silent in a way that made every sound feel louder. I finally stood up, placed all the letters back into the wooden box except the sealed one, and carried it to my room. I sat on my bed with the envelope in my hands. My name stared back at me, written by a stranger. Someone connected to the truth my mother hid. Someone who knew something about my life that I did not. I took a deep breath, then another, then slowly, very slowly, I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. At the top, in bold handwriting, were the words that made my heart stop. "I am writing this because you deserve to know the truth about your father." My vision blurred, my breath caught, and as I began to read, the world around me disappeared. Only the words remained, words that would shatter everything I thought I knew, words that would explain the fear in my mother's eyes, the silence in her heart, the lies she protected for years, and the truth she hoped I would one day understand. When I began reading the letter addressed to me, the one written in unfamiliar handwriting, I felt like my heart was holding its breath. I didn't know whose words these were or what truth I was about to face, but a strange heaviness settled in my chest, as if my body already knew something my mind had not yet uncovered. The letter was dated many years ago, long before I was old enough to understand anything about the world, long before I could question who I was or where I came from. I held the page close, letting my eyes adjust to the sharp, deliberate strokes of the handwriting. Then I read the first line. "You need to know the truth about your father, because one day you may come looking for answers, and I may no longer be here to give them." I swallowed hard. Whatever came next would not be simple. I knew that instantly. The letter continued, "Your father was not the man your mother hoped he would be. He was not the husband she prayed for, and he was not the father you deserved." My fingers tightened around the paper. The words felt heavy, as if each one carried years of pain. There was no anger in the writing, no bitterness, just a calm, tired honesty, the kind that comes from someone who has lived through something they no longer wish to hide. The story behind the silence. The next paragraph felt like a slow unraveling of a truth that had been wrapped tightly for years. When your mother met him, she was young, hopeful, gentle. She believed in kindness and she believed in love. But your father, he believed in control. Control, the word cut through me. The letter explained how my mother had slowly realized the man she married was not the man she thought he was. He had a temper, not loud, not violent in obvious ways, but the quiet kind of temper that hides behind cold eyes and long silences, the kind that makes a gentle person shrink into themselves. He isolated her, pushed away her friends, insisted they move away from her family, stopped her from working, stopped her from speaking freely, stopped her from being herself. The writer described it carefully, delicately, as if these details needed to be handled with soft hands. Your mother changed after marrying him, not because she wanted to, but because she was trying to survive. My chest tightened. I could imagine her, the woman who raised me with such tenderness, living in a life where tenderness was not returned to her. The letter continued, "When she became pregnant with you, she was afraid, not of motherhood. She had always dreamed of that. She was afraid of what he would become." That line sent a chill through me, because motherhood was the one thing she did with certainty, with love, with pride. But she carried fear beneath every smile she gave me. Now I understood why, the night she left. The letter described a night I had never heard about, a night that changed the course of my life completely. It said, "You were barely a few weeks old when everything changed. Your father wanted control over every part of your mother's life, including you." I felt my breath catch. I read slowly. "He wanted to decide how you would be raised, how you would be fed, how you would be disciplined, how you would be shaped. He wanted to shape you in his image, not hers." The writer explained how my mother tried to reason with him, how she begged him to soften, how she pleaded for a home filled with love, not fear. But he wanted ownership, not partnership, power, not peace. One night, an argument escalated, not with shouting, that wasn't his way, but with cold threats that made her realize something terrifying. "He did not see me as a child, he saw me as a possession." The letter continued, "That night your mother packed one small bag. She wrapped you in a thin blanket, and she walked out the door with nothing but the hope of keeping you safe." My hand covered my mouth. Tears filled my eyes before I realized I was crying. I imagined her, young, frightened, carrying an infant, stepping into the night with no plan, no money, no help. I whispered, "Why didn't she tell me this?" But the answer was already in the letter, why she ran and why she hid. The writer, whose identity I still didn't know, explained that my mother had gone to the one person she trusted, the person writing the letter, a friend, a quiet guardian in the background of our story, someone who saw everything and carried truths I never knew existed. The letter continued. "She came to me at midnight, shaking, terrified, holding you tightly as if the world was trying to take you away. She said she could not go back. She said she would rather raise you alone than raise you in fear." I could almost see it, her standing at someone's door, trembling, protecting me with everything she had. The writer said they helped her leave the city, helped her change her name, helped her start over, helped her disappear because my father had power, connections, inflated pride, and a belief that anything linked to him, including me, belonged to him. The letter said, "He searched for you both, for months, then for years, not out of love but out of wounded ego." Everything made sense now, why my mother avoided crowds, why she avoided old friends, why she flinched at certain questions, why she never spoke about the past. She wasn't hiding from shame, she was hiding from him. She was protecting me, the writer's identity. As I neared the end of the letter, I finally reached the line that revealed who was writing to me. "I was your mother's closest friend before she married him. I am the one who helped her disappear, and I am telling you this now because I promised her I would if she could no longer speak for herself." A friend, a guardian, someone who stayed in the shadows to keep us safe. They ended the letter with words that shook me so deeply I had to stop reading for a moment. "Your mother did not lie to hurt you. She lied to save you. She carried the weight of your safety alone for many years. If you feel anger toward her, let it soften. She was braver than you will ever know." I pressed the letter against my chest. My tears fell onto the paper, blurring the ink. All the questions I had carried for years. Why did she hide things? Why did she avoid the past? Why did she never speak of my father? Everything had an answer now. She wasn't protecting herself. She was protecting me, not from disappointment, not from heartbreak, but from a man who did not know how to love, a man who still believed he had a claim on our lives. The final lines. The letter ended with a final message. "If he ever finds you, remember this. Your mother fought harder for your freedom than he ever fought for control. You owe him nothing, not your time, not your love, not your forgiveness." I read the last line again and again. My mother had lived with this fear, quietly, silently, for years, and she did it alone, without telling me, without letting me carry even a corner of her burden. She wanted my childhood to be peaceful. She wanted my life to be unstained by the darkness she escaped. She wanted to give me everything she never had, understanding that broke something inside me, and healed something at the same time. I whispered into the quiet room. "I'm sorry, Mama. I didn't know, I didn't understand, but I do now." The truth, heavy and heartbreaking, had finally revealed itself, and this was the turning point, the moment my anger dissolved, the moment her silence became love in its purest form, because the truth she hid for years wasn't a betrayal. It was protection, sacrifice, courage. It was motherhood. For a long time after finishing the letter, I didn't move, I didn't speak, I didn't even blink much. I just sat there on my bed, the envelope open beside me, the letter trembling slightly in my hands, as if my heartbeat was pulsing through the paper. Everything I thought I knew about my life had shifted, everything I believed about my mother, her silence, her boundaries, her secrets, had rearranged itself into something I had never considered. She had lived her entire life protecting me from a danger I never saw, and she carried that burden alone. Suddenly, every memory of her felt different. I could see her not just as my mother, but as a woman who had survived something heavy, a woman who had learned to breathe quietly, a woman who smiled for me even when her world was built on fear. I leaned back against the wall, letting the truth settle inside me. It didn't settle quickly, it didn't settle easily. Truth rarely does. The silence after the truth. The house felt too quiet. It was the kind of silence that makes you aware of your own breathing. My mother was gone. I could no longer run to her, no longer ask her the questions that burned inside me, no longer hear the softness of her voice explaining things she once hid. But through these letters, she was still speaking, still guiding, still protecting. I wiped my eyes slowly. I whispered, "I wish you told me. I wish I knew earlier." But even as I said the words, a softer voice inside me answered, "She told you in the only way she knew how." Her actions, her caution, her distance from the past, her fear of certain names, her silence around the topic of my father. They were all small truths, spoken without words. I just didn't understand them then. Memories seen through new eyes. For hours I sat and remembered everything she had ever done for me. Not the gifts because there were few, not the grand gestures because life didn't allow those, but the little things, the everyday things, the things she did without expecting praise. I remembered how she always walked home with me after school even when I begged her not to. She used to say, "I like the fresh air," but now I understood it was fear, not preference. I remembered how she never let strangers hold me as a baby, how she locked the door even in daylight, how she kept the curtains half closed in the evenings. At the time, it felt like overprotectiveness. Now it felt like survival. I remembered how she kissed the top of my head every morning, as if confirming I was still there, still safe. I remembered how she sometimes stared at me when she thought I wasn't looking, not with dislike, but with gratitude, as if she couldn't believe she had saved me. I pressed my palms over my eyes, letting the memories wash over me. She must have been so tired, so scared, so alone, and yet, she never let that fear fall on me. She absorbed every bit of it so that I could grow up without shadows. That realization broke me open in a way nothing else had. The guilt that followed. With understanding came guilt. A quiet, gentle guilt, the kind that doesn't accuse you but invites you to look back and see things differently. I thought of all the times I had snapped at her, all the moments when I told her she was too protective, too distant, too mysterious, too unwilling to let me know the truth. I remembered the anger I carried in my late teens, the anger that built walls between us, walls she never tried to break, walls she never blamed me for. She let me build them because she loved me, because she understood I was growing in the dark without knowing it, because she knew that one day I would see the light she had been shielding me from. My throat tightened painfully. "I'm sorry," I whispered again into the quiet room. "I'm sorry for not seeing you." It wasn't a loud apology, not a dramatic one, just a soft, honest whisper from a child finally understanding a mother's heart, the weight of protection. As the evening deepened, the story inside the letters expanded in my mind. My father, the man who should have been a comfort, a guide, a warm presence, had been something else entirely. Someone who believed in control more than love, someone who saw people as objects more than companions. Someone who believed I belonged to him because possession mattered more than connection. My mother's friend had written that he spent years looking for us. Years, I imagined her living with that, every day feeling like she was walking on thin glass, every knock on the door making her heart seize, every unfamiliar face in the neighborhood making her tense. And yet, she cooked for me, laughed with me, held me when I cried. She made life gentle, even when life had never been gentle to her. She built a world for me where I felt safe, where I felt loved, where I could grow without the shadows she knew too well. I whispered into the empty air, "You were so strong, Mama, stronger than I ever knew." A mother's love in every letter. As night approached, I opened the remaining letters one by one. Some described her fears, some described her hopes for me, some described dreams she had given up so she could give me a better life. One letter said, "If you ever feel lost, remember this. You were my courage. You were the reason I kept going." Another said, "I want you to grow into someone who is kind, not wounded, someone who is brave, not hardened, someone who knows love, not fear. That is why I hide the past, not to erase it but to keep it from shaping you." I held these letters like delicate treasures, like pieces of her soul she had pressed into paper. Every word felt like a fingerprint, a memory, a breath she left behind for me. The healing begins. The truth didn't heal me instantly, nothing does, but it opened a door inside me, a door that had been locked since childhood, the door that separated confusion from understanding. I began to see my mother as a whole person, not just Mom, not just the woman who cooked dinner and cleaned the house and worked 2 jobs, but a woman who fought a quiet war, a woman who protected her child by carrying fear the way others carry groceries, heavy, awkward, tirelessly, without complaint. A woman who rebuilt herself after breaking, a woman who rebuilt me before I even knew I needed rebuilding. And slowly, something inside me shifted. The anger I once felt dissolved. The resentment melted. The The confusion softened. In its place grew something tender, something warm, something like forgiveness. Not for her because she did nothing wrong, but for myself, for all the years I didn't understand her. Understanding the lie. She lied, yes, but her lie was a bridge, not a wall, a bridge that carried me into a safer life, a kinder life, a life she didn't have. Her lie wasn't deception, it was protection, a shield, a sacrifice. Sometimes lies break people, but her lie saved me, the decision I had to make. After reading every letter, I carefully placed them back in the wooden box. The box felt heavier now, not physically but emotionally. It held the truth of who she was, the truth of who I was, the truth of the life she survived for me. I sat with the box in my lap and asked myself a question. What do I do now? Do I try to find my father? Do I search for the past? Do I confront the shadows she kept away from me? Or do I honor her by choosing peace? I closed my eyes. I thought about the fear she lived with. I thought about the peace she tried to give me, and I realized something simple. I didn't need anything from him, not answers, not closure, not identity. My mother had given me all of that, everything I am. My kindness, my strength, my resilience came from her. I didn't need to look into the darkness she escaped. Sometimes understanding is enough, sometimes knowledge itself is closure. I whispered into the quiet, I won't look for him. I choose you, Mama. I choose the life you fought for. A new kind of peace. That night I slept for the first time in days, not deeply, but peacefully. When morning came, the world looked different, not brighter, not easier, just clearer, and clarity can be its own kind of comfort. I made myself a cup of tea, something she always did when she wanted to think. I stood by the window watching the early sunlight stretch across the sky. For the first time I felt her strength in me, not the tired strength she carried, but the quiet, steady strength she left behind, the kind of strength that says, I survived, and so will you. Morning arrived gently, the way it does after a long night of thinking. I woke with a softness in my chest, not peace exactly, but something close to it, a kind of acceptance, a kind of understanding that does not remove the pain but makes it easier to carry. The wooden box lay on my bedside table. Every time I looked at it, I felt two things at once, a quiet ache and a quiet gratitude. It held the pieces of a story I had never asked for, but desperately needed. I lifted the box and held it for a moment, letting my fingers rest against the carved edges. My mother must have touched this box many times, perhaps in moments of fear, perhaps in moments of hope, perhaps on nights when she prayed I would never need to open it. I whispered, thank you for everything you hid and for everything you gave. The words felt small compared to the life she lived, but they were all I had, a walk through the home she built. I walked slowly through the house, not searching for anything, just remembering. The kitchen where she cooked meals even when she was exhausted, the table where she taught me how to read, the window where she watched me walk to school thinking I didn't notice. I remembered her humming softly while folding laundry. I remembered her hand on my forehead when I was sick. I remembered her worried eyes when I came home late. I remembered her nervous smile whenever the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Everything made sense now. Every fear, every habit, every rule she set, every silence she kept. Her entire life was a map of protection, a map I only learned to read after she was gone, letting go of the anger. I sat in the living room, the same place where I had first opened her letters, and I took a deep breath. For years I had carried anger, not loud anger, not destructive anger, but quiet, constant anger, the kind that sits in the corners of your heart. Anger at her silence, anger at her secrets, anger at the distance between what I wanted to know and what she wanted to protect. But now, that anger felt misplaced. She had not kept the truth from me to punish me. She had kept it to save me. Understanding that softened something heavy inside me, I whispered into the room, I forgive you, Mama, not because you did wrong, but because I finally understand why you did it. And with those words, the anger, that quiet, stubborn anger, slowly loosened its grip, the lesson she never spoke aloud. Later that day I stepped outside. The air felt fresh, almost new. Birds moved across the sky in calm patterns. Children's voices echoed from somewhere far away. Life went on. Despite pain, despite truth, Despite loss, I realized something simple but powerful. My mother had not taught me strength by telling me how strong she was. She taught me strength by living through the unimaginable and still choosing kindness. She had not taught me courage by asking me to be brave. She taught me courage by walking away from a life that would have broken her. She had not taught me love through words. She taught me through sacrifice. Everything she wanted me to learn. She wrote not in letters, but in the life she lived, beside me. A quiet goodbye. That evening, I placed flowers on the small wooden stool where her framed photograph stood. Her smile, gentle, warm, a little tired, looked back at me. I touched the frame softly. "I know now," I whispered. "I know why you were quiet. I know why you were careful. I know why you carried everything alone. And I'm proud of you, more than you ever knew." Tears filled my eyes, not heavy tears, but soft ones that fall when love meets understanding. "I'll be okay," I said. "I promise you, I'll be okay." I meant it, because now I knew her story, and knowing her story gave me strength I didn't have before, carrying her forward. I placed the wooden box on a shelf, not hidden, not locked, but present. A reminder of truth, a reminder of love, a reminder of the courage she carried quietly. I didn't need to reopen the letters often. I didn't need to memorize every detail. What mattered was the heart of the story, the way it changed me, the way it healed me, the way it brought me closer to her even after she was gone. Her truth did not break me. It rebuilt me, piece by piece, word by word, memory by memory, the path ahead. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, I learned to breathe differently, more calmly, more deeply. I learned to move through life with a new kind of awareness. The awareness that people carry stories we may never see, that silence sometimes speaks louder than words, that love sometimes disguises itself as distance, that protection sometimes looks like a lie. But most of all, I learned that strength is not always loud, dramatic, or visible. Sometimes strength is a woman holding her child close and walking away from everything she knows, because staying would break her child before the world even began. Sometimes strength is a lie told softly, to safeguard a life. Sometimes strength is a mother. The final thought she left me with. On one of her letters, the smallest one, she wrote a sentence so simple, yet it became the compass for my healing. "I hope one day you will understand that love is not always spoken, but it is always felt." She was right. I felt it, not in her words, but in her silence, not in her explanations, but in her sacrifices, not in what she told me, but in what she hid. I closed my eyes and whispered, "I feel it now, Mama. I finally feel it." And with that, the story she carried, the truth she hid, the fear she lived with, the love she poured into me, became not just her story, but mine too. A story of quiet courage, a story of survival, a story of a mother's love strong enough to rewrite an entire life. Ending note. This is how her story lives on, not in the lie she told, but in the truth she protected, and in the child she raised with those truths hidden gently in her heart, a child who now understands, a child who forgives, a child who carries her love forward, always. The end.